Just let it in.
It's a Star Wars show. I'm your host, Jon Justice, and welcome to the final episode of a Star Wars show for 2025, barring some major news breaking out between now and the next few weeks. Keep an eye on the channel, though, because I will, at least I intend to put up a review of Avatar Fire and Ash, which I'll be heading out to see today as I start my Christmas vacation from the full-time job. Also, I'm hearing there could be a new Mandalorian and Grogu trailer attached to the latest Avatar film, so I'll certainly be sharing my thoughts on that. And as I mentioned in a previous podcast, I had the opportunity to see the Mando and Grogu trailer on an IMAX big screen ahead of Tron Ares, and it looked absolutely fantastic. I've mentioned many times on the show that I'm more looking forward to Star Wars Starfighter. Still doesn't roll off the tongue very easily, but The Mandalorian and Grogu I'm excited for as well, and certainly excited to see what new footage that we receive before it hits the big screen next year. On this week's episode, I want to talk a little bit about The Force Awakens, celebrating its 10-year anniversary, so we'll look back at The Force Awakens. And also, I had a listener to my weekly radio show who emailed me. I talk quite a bit about unconventional Christmas movies. And in this email, I want to break down what he had to say over two different unconventional Christmas movies, both of which I believe are Christmas films that I watch every single year, and I will be watching both of these movies over the course of my 2-week vacation. That's Lethal Weapon, the first Lethal Weapon, and of course the debate that continues around Die Hard. This listener went through and actually laid out what he believes are the quintessential questions and answers that lead to both Lethal Weapon and Die Hard being undercover Hallmark level Christmas movies. And so we'll get to that in the latter part of this week's episode. But first, again, I want to look back upon The Force Awakens, 10 years since its release. And it's astonishing to me that it's been 10 years since The Force Awakens came out in theaters.
Something inside me has always been there. But now it's awake. And I need help.
All right, it's not lost on me that I ended up using a clip from The Last Jedi, transitioning to talk about The Force Awakens, but I did use The Force Awakens intro to the show this week, so I feel like I'm making good on the film. I've made it no secret that I love the sequel trilogy, and that currently my favorite Star Wars film, the go-to film to watch, for me is The Rise of Skywalker, for the reasons that I've laid out prior on the podcast. That being said, of the 3 sequel trilogy films, the best one is The Force Awakens, in my opinion. George Lucas has criticized The Force Awakens in public, saying that he felt the director, J.J. Abrams, and the writer, Lawrence Kasdan, didn't take big enough risks in the film, with it being not only a bit of a combination of all of the original trilogy films in the locations that are in the movie, but also within the design of the vehicles for both the First Order and the Rebellion. And George Lucas famously tried to, push the boundaries in terms of the design aesthetics when you go look at the differences within the prequel trilogy, when you look at what he did within the Clone Wars. And that was the major criticism that George Lucas had of The Force Awakens, is that it didn't take enough risks. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because having a new director, having this be the first film not guided by George Lucas's hand after the sale of the Star Wars franchise to Disney, I'm not so sure that if J.J. Abrams had made dramatic changes to the aesthetics of Star Wars, I'm not sure how well the fandom would have accepted that. There is a nostalgia factor that's attached to The Force Awakens. There's no doubt about that. But Disney made the right move in bringing about that familiarity. And I remember talking about The Force Awakens in the past and really not even realizing the abundance of similarities in the films upon their initial release. Yes, you had the dark side, light side elements. Yes, you had the story of a hero's journey with Rey. Yes, you had Rey on a sand-focused planet of Jakku instead of it being Tatooine. Yes, you had a cantina in the film, and so you have all of these different elements that drew from the original trilogy, where one could certainly go and make a good argument that it was all very derivative of the original trilogy. But the point of what Disney was trying to do in the absence of having a Star Wars film since the prequels, and especially considering that at the time of the filming and production of The Force Awakens, the prequels still were not looked upon as fondly as they are now. I thought the moves that J.J. Abrams made were completely appropriate. And I didn't even really associate the search for Luke Skywalker and the map containing a portion, the what Poe Dameron gives to BB-8 at the beginning of the film when he ventures off into the Jakku desert. And the scene most famously J.J. Abrams has said is his favorite shot of the film is that moment after that initial opening sequence on Jakku when Poe Dameron is taken into custody by the First Order and Kylo Ren, and you see that shot of BB-8 rolling off into the desert, and there's an alien that pops his head out of the ground, makes a little noise, and looks around. J.J. Abrams has said in various interviews that that's his favorite shot of the film. He feels like it's quintessential Star Wars. I never even really associated the passing off of that little device that Poe Dameron puts into BB-8 that contains a portion of the map leading to Luke Skywalker, that being derivative of the Death Star plans that were being sought or transferred by Princess Leia after the events of Rogue One. Of course, Rogue One hadn't come out at that point in time. I didn't even really put together. It didn't really seem redundant to me. It just seemed part of the story. It was only after the fact that I went, oh, I guess that is really similar to what took place at the beginning of A New Hope, with Princess Leia handing off the Death Star plans to R2-D2 before he ends up on Tatooine. It is absolutely derivative. The point being that at the time, I didn't really make that connection. I was just along for the ride and enjoying the film. We have these new characters. We have a villain, a new protagonist who we hadn't met yet at that portion of the film, obviously. And I was just enjoying it. And even upon its Blu-ray release, it wasn't until later that I went, oh yeah, I guess that is pretty much how the original, how A New Hope opened. And it is very derivative of that. But going back to my initial point, had J.J. Abrams really been, worked outside the box of what, fans would be expecting, and had completely upended the design aesthetic with, the First Order troopers looking like updated versions of stormtroopers. And now, of course, we know the backstory, that this is all sort of part of Palpatine's plan now that the story is completely told. Had he really done something completely different, which is what I expect is going to happen with Star Wars Starfighter, I don't think the film would have been as widely accepted so positively by the fandom. I mean, it made the most of all three of the sequel trilogy films. Now, perhaps in retrospect, the remainder of the sequel trilogy suffered from the fandom because The Force Awakens was so derivative of the original trilogy. We'll never know. Those films are what they are. That being said, The Force Awakens, I think, was the film that Disney needed to make to reestablish Star Wars within the fandom. If there were any mistakes that were made afterwards, it was ultimately how The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker were not so universally accepted as the original was, being, The Force Awakens. I know friends of the show, Zach from Knights of Vader, doesn't like The Force Awakens as much, and I don't remember exactly what his criticism is, and I'm sure he'll message me to let me know. I'm assuming it's probably because of what I'm mentioning right now, that it was so derivative of the original trilogy, and specifically a New Hope in some of the story beats. But for this lifelong fan, having seen Star Wars in the theater when I was 5 years old, as I've mentioned way too many times, speaking of being derivative, that those aspects of the film really didn't bother me. I was thrilled when I saw it in the theater, although that first viewing of The Force Awakens, I will admit, walking out, and there was no way it was ever going to live up to the hype in my mind and the expectation that I had and excitement that I had of going and seeing that film for the first time in theaters. I remember waiting outside and then getting into the theater, and it was 45 minutes until the film was going to start, and it was the longest 45 minutes of my life. Time, being subjective as it is. I remember just sitting there going, is the time ever going to tick away for this film to actually go and begin? And while I was happy with the film, I remember it was almost like this relief that didn't allow me in that moment to fully appreciate how much I actually did enjoy the movie. And I've probably watched The Force Awakens more than I have any of the other sequel trilogy films. And not just because it was the first one out, but because it is the most accessible and ultimately enjoyable, even though right now The Force Awakens, the Rise of Skywalker is the movie that I tend to go and watch most often. I will say that I don't agree with J.J. Abrams when he offered up his explanation for Maz Kanata's castle, because I didn't take the scene in Maz Kanata's castle to be, again, in there because J.J. Abrams wanted to include a cantina scene. It was only afterwards, watching the documentary, that J.J. Abrams said that if he were a Star Wars fan watching The Force Awakens and there wasn't a cantina-like scene, he would have been asking, well, where is the cantina scene? I certainly was not a fan that would have wanted that. At the same time, that moment on Takodana, when they arrived there and went into Maz Kanata's castle, even with the song in the background, I didn't think that it was a cantina scene ripoff. I just felt that it was another cantina-like place that the characters of the film were going in and visiting. Ultimately, because that's what the cantina scene was. I mean, the cantina scene in the original Star Wars was a reflection of what you would have in the real world bar, or a group of individuals going to, say, like a biker bar to go and find somebody to help them on their journey. I mean, George Lucas was riffing off of that which had came before it, just like J.J. Abrams was riffing off of what George Lucas did. Which also speaks to the success of The Mandalorian, and certainly Season 1, wherein Jon Favreau has said that his intention with The Mandalorian wasn't so much to go and copy what George Lucas had done prior, but to be inspired by what inspired George Lucas when he made the original trilogy. And I think that J.J. Abrams was doing something similar, even though they were lifting more from what George Lucas had done with the original trilogy. That is still a reflection of what was inspired from George Lucas in the original trilogy. The Force Awakens is just a fun film. And at over 2 minutes, it still flies by every single time I watch that movie, much in the same way the original Star Wars film does. And the one thing The Force Awakens does best of the first three of the sequel trilogy is that it really is the most straightforward. Here are your protagonists. Here's your hero's journey. Here's your MacGuffin. We're going to go on this adventure, and it's not convoluted and bogged down in any way, shape, or form. You cannot say that about The Last Jedi by any stretch. That movie feels every bit of its 2 hours and 25 minutes, despite the fact of how much I love that film. As does The Force Awakens. I mean, as does The Rise of Skywalker. The Rise of Skywalker gets a little bit convoluted in its storytelling as well, even though I find it wholly enjoyable. So, I hadn't thought much about what Star Wars I was going to watch on my vacation. I'm definitely going to be taking in The Force Awakens now. It's not been too long since I've seen it, but knowing that it's the 10-year anniversary and leading into what I want to talk about for the remainder of the show, of all of the Star Wars films, The Force Awakens is the one that I most associate with Christmas because of its release around Christmas initially when it came out in December 17th is when I saw it. It was officially released on the 18th, but it came out that Thursday prior. So I saw it on December 17th of 2015. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at the date right now, and again, 10 years to the day of when I'm actually recording this podcast. It was celebrating we're celebrating its 10-year anniversary. But the whole lead up was all happening around the holidays through Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so when I watch that film, it reminds me of that time period 10 years ago around Christmas, even though the film itself has nothing to do with Christmas whatsoever. I have albums that I discovered and listened to during the holiday season in years past, and those albums are always associated with Christmas, where I only listen to them around Christmas time, even though they are not Christmas movies. So, The Force Awakens is my Star Wars Christmas movie. I miss the holiday season getting excited about a Star Wars film the way that we did with The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And I'm actually looking at the poster right now, and I remember when we got our first image of the poster, and we were able to see characters like Maz Kanata on the poster that we hadn't seen before. It was the first time we got a good look at Starkiller Base. It was the first time that we actually even knew that there was going to be another planet-killing creation, a planet killer, in Star Wars. And then finding out upon the poster's release that it was actually called Starkiller Base, and knowing that that was a nod to Luke Skywalker's original name of Luke Starkiller, and of course Starkiller within the Force Unleashed games. Speaking of Christmas movies, let's go ahead and turn our attention away from Star Wars and talk a little bit about unconventional Christmas films and why Lethal Weapon and Die Hard are both Christmas movies.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Sam wrote to me, Justice at iHeartMedia. That's my Justice at iHeartRadio. That's my work email address. You can email me, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. He writes this: as a listener for a handful of years, I know you appreciate movies and sometimes interesting takes and thoughts on movies. I put together some thoughts on a couple of them, wishing you a blessed Christmas holiday to you and your family. Undercover Hallmark Christmas movies. Lethal Weapon is actually the ultimate Hallmark Christmas movie. Hear me out. If you look past the explosions and the cocaine, Lethal Weapon follows the Hallmark Channel movie formula perfectly. It isn't an action movie. It's a holiday rom-com with guns. And here is the irrefutable evidence. Now, even before I read this from Sam, listener Sam, I already considered Lethal Weapon a Christmas movie. For all the reasons that he lays out here specifically, I felt the same way. So let's get into it. Number one, it passes the tinsel test. The movie opens with Jingle Bell Rock. There is a shootout in a Christmas tree lot. The climax happens on a front lawn covered in holiday lights. The entire film is visually dipped in Christmas. And this was something that director Shane Black does in the majority of his films. The majority of Shane Black written and directed films take place over Christmas. The other Christmas movie, Unconventional, but absolutely is a Christmas movie, also written by Shane Black, would be Iron Man 3, as is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Number two, the grieving widower trope. Martin Riggs is the quintessential Hallmark protagonist, a handsome, brooding man who has lost his wife and forgotten the meaning of joy. He lives in rugged isolation, a trailer on the beach, and has closed his heart to the world. He needs the magic of Christmas to learn to love again. Number three, the sad dog dad factor. Every Hallmark hunk needs a dog to show that despite his rough exterior, he has a gentle soul. Riggs has Sam, the loyal border collie. The dog is the only creature that understands his pain. If a guy has a tragic backstory and a dog he loves, he is legally required to find happiness by the end of the film. Number 4, the opposites attract rom-com arc. Riggs, a loose cannon, and Murtaugh, a family man, have a classic meet cute. They start off hating each other, bickering constantly, but through a series of wacky hijinks, jumping off of buildings and torture, they realize they actually complete one another. It is structurally a romance. Number 5, the villain is irrelevant. In Hallmark movies, the bad guy is usually a corporate suit trying to buy the family farm. In Lethal Weapon, it's General McAllister. They serve the exact same purpose. They are one-dimensional plot devices that exist solely to push the two main characters closer together. And number 6, the true ending. The movie doesn't end at the police station. It ends with Riggs showing up at Murtaugh's door on Christmas Day. He gives a symbolic gift, the hollow point bullet, to show he no longer wants to be alone, and he's invited inside to eat turkey. The film ends with the freeze frame of a happy family. Does it end with the freeze frame of the happy family? I thought that it ended with the shot outside the house. I'm 99% sure it ends with I'll be home for Christmas after Riggs is invited into the house and he whistles for Sam to come and join them. Because he shows up at the door to give the bullet to Riggs. The daughter answers the door to give the bullet to Murtaugh. The daughter answers the door. Riggs is all messed up because of the fight that he had with Gary Busey. His arm's in a sling. He's all beat up. And then as he's walking away, Murtaugh shows up and then invites him in. He calls for Sam. They go inside. I got to go back and watch. I think the emailer's wrong. Anyway, the verdict. If you edit out the violence, Lethal Weapon is a heartwarming story about a lonely, suicidal man and his dog who find a new family just in time for Christmas dinner, case closed. Totally agree. Now comes the big one. Die Hard is actually the most romantic Hallmark movie ever made. People get confused because of the C4 and the machine guns, but if you look at the plot structure, Die Hard is 100% a Hallmark holiday romance. It isn't a movie about a heist, it's a movie about a man trying to save his marriage on Christmas Eve. And here's the proof. Number 1, the coming home for Christmas setup. Every Hallmark movie starts with someone traveling. John McClane flies 3,000 miles across the country on Christmas Eve. Why? Not to fight the terrorists. He is there to reconcile with his estranged wife and see his children. He is the rugged blue-collar guy entering the flashy corporate world that he doesn't fit into. Number 2, the career versus love conflict. The central conflict isn't John versus Hans, it's John versus Holly's career. She moved to Los Angeles for a high-profile job and is using her maiden name Gennaro. The Nakatomi Tower represents a big city life that is stealing her away from her family values. John is there to win her back. I've been in that building, by the way. I used to do public real estate auctioneering in LA and Orange County, and I remember one day I was driving through that particular region where that building is, and I remember seeing it going, oh, that's the Die Hard building, and it wasn't too long after that I actually had to go and make a document delivery inside that building. It was rather exciting. Let's see. John is there at the Nakatomi Tower to win her heart back. Number 3, the sleazy other guy rival. Harry Ellis is the textbook Hallmark antagonist suitor. He is the slick, wealthy corporate guy who thinks he can buy Holly's affection and negotiate with the terrorists. He exists solely to show the audience that the rugged hero is the better choice for her. Number 4, the wise confidant trope. In Hallmark movies, the hero usually has a wise bartender or an old friend to talk to about their feelings. In Die Hard, that is Sergeant Al Powell. John spends half of the movie on the radio with Al, not discussing tactics, but literally confessing his emotional failures as a husband. It is a therapy session with bullets. Number 5, the villain is just a Grinch. Hans Gruber is essentially the evil land developer trying to ruin the town festival just with better suits and German accents. He is an obstacle designed to force John and Holly to realize how much they love each other. And number 6, the miracle of Christmas ending. So how does the movie end? The bad guy falls, sure, but the real ending is John and Holly embracing. She reintroduces herself to the police as Holly McClane, accepting their marriage again. Paper floats down from the sky looking exactly like snow. They kiss. They get into the limousine. Let It Snow plays over the credits. The verdict? Die Hard is a story about a stubborn man who learns to apologize and put his family first, saving Christmas in the process, and it just happens to have a higher body count than A Royal Christmas Case Closed. I cannot disagree with any of the points made by listener Sam in this post. Both Lethal Weapon and Die Hard are the ultimate Hallmark Christmas movies. Undercover. Other oddballs on my Christmas movie watch list, and this is probably the strangest one. This one, though, is rather special to me for a number of reasons. Because not only is it a Christmas film, but it's also a Christmas film that you can watch specifically between Christmas and New Year's, and that is Ridley Scott's Prometheus. If you've seen Prometheus, you may or may not remember. I've seen it too many times to count. But at the beginning of the film, the Idris Elba character, the pilot, the captain of the Prometheus, actually sets up a Christmas tree. And when Vickers walks out, she says, "What is that?" And he says, "It's Christmas." The end of the film, the protagonist is taking off on one of the engineer's Juggernaut ships, and she mentions that it's New Year's Day. So the film actually takes place over the course of a week between Christmas and New Year's. And it is also on the list of films that I watch on my Christmas vacation. For that reason, even though the film itself has nothing to do with Christmas whatsoever. I suppose you could probably go and make an argument regarding what transpires in the film and something relating there to new births and all that kind of stuff, but then it gets a little strange and I don't want to go there. I just like the fact that the film itself happens to take place in the week between Christmas and New Year. So, as always, if you'd care to comment or add your thoughts, drop me an email, TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. Thank you so much for checking out another episode. Look for more consistent episodes as we head into the new year with a lot of Star Wars news to come out for sure as we head into the promotion of The Mandalorian and Grogu, Star Wars celebrations coming up, and then what will certainly be the leaks and rumors, and then the official promotion of Star Wars Starfighter heading into the latter part of 2026. As always, I hope you have a fantastic Christmas and New Year's, that it's filled with all the love that our Lord Jesus Christ can provide to you and your family. And again, I hope wherever you are, you're happy. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're safe. God bless to you and yours. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'll talk to you here on A Star Wars Show with Jon Justice in the new year of 2026.
The Force will be with you, always.
My nerd world.